All right, welcome folks. It's a little after 12:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started on our meeting today, which focuses on the outreach and engagement for this project that will kick off the development of the Oregon Energy Security Plan. And we do have a lot to cover today. As you can see with our agenda here, I'm Dr. Casey Stedman. I'll be starting with just giving you an overview of the logistics for this meeting, and then I'll hand things off to the Oregon Department of Energy so that they can welcome you guys and provide some opening comments. We'll then dig into some details about the Oregon Department of Energy specifically and the Energy Security Plan, and we'll explain your role in the development and implementation of this plan. And after a short break, I'll come back and introduce our strategy for stakeholder engagement. And we'll move on to some energy and security stories. And I'll give you a heads up now that there will be a survey at the end of this meeting so that you can give us feedback that we'll be teeing up throughout the course of the meeting. So with that, I'm going to go and, the logistics. So logistics for this meeting. First, we want you to be aware that we are recording this meeting. This is so that we can post this on the project website for those who may be joining us later in the project or who couldn't make it today. And so for that reason, we have disabled the microphones and we have closed the chat. However, we absolutely want to hear from you. So please do take note of the project email address, which is energy.security@energy.oregon.gov. And then we also have a comment portal online, which you can access through the QR code that you can see on your screen right now. And you will see these referenced multiple times throughout the talk today. So now at this point, I will hand things off to Janine for welcome comments.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janine Benner, and I'm the director of the Oregon Department of Energy. And I am so pleased to welcome you here this afternoon to work with us, to start your work with us on the Oregon Energy Security Plan. The work that the ODO team will be doing in collaboration with all of you in this effort is crucial to the safety and security of Oregonians and is an obligation to both our state legislature and our federal partners. It builds on a lot of great work that's been happening all around the state at our sister agencies, with local governments, and here at the Oregon Department of Energy, where we have a fuel action plan that we've been able to put into action a few times recently. And it's building on just decades of work and relationship building here at ODO. I think it's also a great opportunity to bring together a number of key leaders in our state and around the country. And I'm really pleased to be able to invite the next person up to the podium to join you. Megan Levy is a project manager at the state, local, tribal, and territorial team of the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, or CSER, at the U.S. Department of Energy. We're really pleased to have her partnership and the U.S. Department of Energy's partnership in this effort. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Janine. And as Janine said, I'm Megan Levy. I'm so excited to be here, a one-time Oregon resident or Oregonian. I am just really excited to see this stakeholder effort. We often say in emergency response and energy security that response is relationships. And I can't think of a more important relationship than the government with the people who we serve. It's just so important that we understand the challenges, the energy insecurity, and that we work together to solve these things. So we know that this has been an important thing that Congress has been emphasizing since the Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1974, when state energy offices were created and were told that they had to have a plan for shortages of energy. And a lot of this was about the Arab oil crisis at the time. However, we've expanded that definition from not just transportation fuels. Now it's about every aspect of energy, which is the underpinning of our entire lives. As you're watching this on a computer and holding your phone, your pocket computer. So we are lucky to have the opportunity of the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021, which codified state energy security plans on a national scale, and in fact defined 6 different elements that the plans have to incorporate. But it's wonderful to see states like Oregon taking it one step further and saying, well, thanks for saying we should have an energy profile, and look at all sources of energy, both regulated and unregulated, that we should look at threats, hazards, and vulnerabilities, both cyber and physical, that we should have an actual risk assessment of critical energy infrastructure, as well as understand the interdependencies between all infrastructure and energy, and that we should do, mitigation, as well as multi-state, regional, and tribal coordination. But Oregon said, hey, why don't we talk a little bit more about equity and environmental justice and think about what the clean energy transition that we've got so many different goals towards really means for all of us? And what does that mean in an energy security perspective? So while we'll be working with our friends to evaluate all 56 energy security plans from all those states and territories that are mandated to turn one in, we'll also be watching processes like this to learn these best practices and hopefully share them with other states in the region and across the country. So thanks again for the opportunity to be here and to watch this process. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Max Woods, the Assistant Director of the Oregon Department of Energy.
Thank you, Megan. Is this camera? Slightly. Okay. Again, my name is Max Woods. I am one of the assistant directors at the Oregon Department of Energy and responsible for, amongst other programs, oversight of the development of the Energy Security Plan. Thank you all for joining us today. First, let me tell you just a little bit about the people and the organization behind the project, specifically the Oregon Department of Energy. We are the lead state agency charged with development of our state's Energy Security Plan. The ODO mission statement, ODO, Oregon Department of Energy, is our mission statement, as it says there on the slide, I think is indicative of the knowledge and experience that we bring to this project. As it says there, ODO, leading Oregon to a safe, equitable, clean, and sustainable energy future. We'll talk about a little bit later in this presentation, while ODO may be the lead coordinating agency and responsible for delivering the product in the end, this is an effort by not only federal and state coordination, but coordination amongst other state agencies. And I particularly want to thank the Oregon Public Utility Commission for working with us so closely on development of this project, as well as throughout our engagement and facilitation program in the coming months with local governments, with tribal governments, and other stakeholders. The next slide here. So specifically, the division that's leading this effort at ODO is the Nuclear Safety and Emergency Preparedness Division. As you can see on the slide, we have multiple core program areas. Many of the people on this call, I suspect, might be familiar with the work of my colleague, Deanna Henry, specifically on the work of the Oregon Petroleum Emergency Action Plan related to our responsibilities for fuel emergency planning and response. Or perhaps you're familiar with the work that we've done on nuclear safety and nuclear policy, particularly on Oregon's engagement at the Hanford cleanup projects just north of our state's border in Southeast Washington. So before we dive into more of the details, starting from the very first principles, what is energy security and how do we define energy security? The definition on the screen is how we at ODO have decided to define it for purposes of this project. There's certainly other ways you could consider energy security. You can see it's primarily concerned with risks and threats to physical infrastructure and energy systems, including energy supply. And I'll note that we adopted this definition from our federal partners with one change, one addition that we in Oregon made. We added the phrase affordable price. And affordability is an important consideration for energy security as we define it and as we will embark on this project. So that's one of the key changes we made to this to the definition. I guess really the only change from our federal partners. We think if people can't afford the energy they need for heating, cooling, transportation, or other needs, well, that's a form of energy security, just as much as risk and threats, cybersecurity threats, natural hazard threats to our physical infrastructure, transmission lines, pipelines, roads, and bridges. So just a quick slide here on the process and the history of the Oregon Energy Security Plan and its development. It's important to note that this isn't the first effort to pull together an energy security plan for the state. People may see the slide here has photographs of covers of historical documents and more recent documents that are sort of around the edges, shall we say, of energy security plan, including a 2012 document called the Oregon Energy Assurance Plan, which was led by Deanna Henry at the time. We now consider that plan to be out of date. We haven't updated it. And our plan now is to work on a wholesale redevelopment with the Oregon Energy Security Plan moving forward. And the Energy Assurance Plan from 2012 kind of put on the shelf and maybe part of the historical archives right now. Let's see if this is my slide. Here we go. And finally, before I turn it over to Deanna Henry to speak to some more slides, I want to make note that this project involves multiple partnerships. Our development team, working closely with federal partners at the U.S. Department of Energy, other state agencies, particularly the Public Utility Commission, as I mentioned earlier, and of course, as you'll see later in the presentation, we are looking to engage with local partners, county governments, city governments, tribal governments, as well as utilities, private energy companies, community groups, and the public. The strategy for pulling together this plan is a little bit of collecting historical documents and current documents that are related to energy security that might already exist, pulling them into one place, as well as developing and doing new analysis, collecting new information, gathering new data, and assessing risks and threats to Oregon's energy systems, and ultimately coming up with recommendations for mitigation that can, for future investment by state and local partners to reduce risks to Oregon's energy systems and increase our security. I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Deanna Henry.
Thank you, Max. Hi, everyone. I'm Deanna Henry. I'm the Emergency Preparedness Manager at the Oregon Department of Energy. And now that you know a little bit more about the history of our energy security plan and our strategy to develop a new one, I'm going to talk about what taking the state energy emergency planning efforts to the next level, starting with the state and federal requirements that guide the development of the state energy security plan. You heard from Max and Megan. Here you go. You heard from Max and Megan that IIJ, or the federal bill, directs the funding and gives the states direction to develop these energy security plans. Well, during the 2022 session, the Oregon legislators passed Senate Bill 1567 that also directs the agency to develop a state energy security plan that mirrors the federal requirements. So Oregon's energy security plan must address all state energy sources of electricity, liquid fuels, and natural gas. You heard Megan say this includes regulated and unregulated energy providers. We have to provide a state energy profile that describes Oregon's energy demands and consumption and explains the state energy supplies from production all the way to end use. We also have to assess all of the threats and hazards that could cause damage to our energy infrastructure, like natural disasters, man-made events, including cybersecurity threats. And of course, our plan has to propose mitigation measures to reduce risk. And this includes measures that would harden our energy infrastructure. We have to have emergency plans in place to address supply disruptions. We also need to coordinate with our tribes to for energy emergency planning and response, as well as our neighboring states within the region, because an energy emergency in Oregon could affect the energy stability in other states. But Senate Bill 1567 includes an additional fuel resilience component that the federal bill does not include, and that's to provide a safety net to our local communities should there be a major disaster. The goal is to bridge the gap between a community running out of fuel while allowing the state adequate time to bring in an outside resource to resupply an affected area. And studies have shown that a 9.0 Cascadia earthquake and tsunami would devastate our region's energy systems, including the liquid fuel supply and distribution system. And so our ongoing planning efforts with our federal partners show that the difficulty isn't bringing fuel into Oregon after a Cascadia event. Our greatest challenge would be moving that fuel to communities in Western Oregon due to the widespread damage to our transportation system. So it could take weeks to get fuel to some communities just due to the lack of access and longer in some of the more remote areas of the state. So the concept here is that if we could have small amounts of additional fuel stored in less seismically active regions of the state, and then the tanks at these facilities are seismically sound, then the area would have additional fuel available for emergency response purposes when needed. So the evaluation of this project will focus primarily on fuel storage locations that can dispense fuel, like public works yards, local airports, motor pools, and similar types such facilities. And we definitely welcome your input and invite you to engage in our discussions. So with both state and federal requirements in mind, the Oregon Department of Energy took the initial step to bring together all available energy information and data from state and federal studies, reports, and assessments into a draft Oregon Energy Security Plan. This draft brings together all of the foundational information that is critical to energy security. So it identifies the authorities, roles, and responsibilities of key agencies and organizations that play a part in energy security. And this includes agencies all around Oregon, our local partners, tribal partners, as well as those roles played by our federal counterparts. And so our plan also speaks to coordination, ESF 12 energy coordination with our federal, state, local, tribal, and private sector partners, including our western states within the region. And the plan also provides a profile of our Oregon energy landscape and summarizes the key energy sector threats that we know of at this time, including some mitigation measures at a high level. And so this draft plan was a necessary step and a required step from the U.S. Department of Energy to demonstrate Oregon's progress in complying with the federal requirements. So Oregon, like all the other states, submitted our draft plans to DOE for review and evaluation at the end of September. And DOE will provide us some feedback on what they think about our draft plan. So you can get a copy of our plan off our website, and you have the URL right there on that slide. So while this plan is intended to be a living document, a completed plan must be submitted to DOE and to the Oregon legislature by September 30th, 2024, with a letter from the governor certifying that Oregon's plan meets state and federal requirements. So we have a lot of work to do over the course of the next year, and your involvement is our next step. While we have a lot of good information about Oregon's energy systems, until now, this information hasn't been collected in an intentional or focused and a holistic way. So we know that data gaps remain. So to finish the plan, we want to bring together all of the information that we currently have on the threats to Oregon's electric, natural gas, and liquid fuel sectors, together with the information, new information that we're going to be collecting from you all, and to fill any data gaps that we identify. And then the completed 2024 plan would have a comprehensive data set where we can conduct a comprehensive quantified risk assessment of all threats to energy sectors. And then when we're done with the risk assessment and analysis, we would provide a suite of mitigation options that will be validated and prioritized. And to do that, we're going to need your help. so that the completed 2024 Oregon Energy Security Plan would have a report that discusses our engagement process with you all, our data collection process, results from the quantified risk assessment, as well as a recommended mitigation approach to strengthening our energy system over time. So it is the agency's vision that the final plan will be a living resource that the state, local government, tribes, in collaboration with our energy providers, nonprofit organizations, as well as all Oregonians, to better prepare to respond and recover from supply disruptions, as well as make more informed decisions about energy infrastructure investments that will improve Oregon's energy security future. So with that, I'm going to bring up Tom Cecilia from our office, and he's going to talk about your role in energy security planning. Thank you.
Thanks, Deanna. To start off, fix the camera. My name's Tom Cecilia. I'm the Hanford hydrogeologist and fuel specialist at ODO. And now that you know who ODO is and something about where we're going with the energy security plan, I want to dive a bit deeper into why we want your help and what we'll do with the information you give us. As Deanna mentioned, we've pulled all the publicly available data and information from other agencies we could for our first draft of the plan. That probably gets us 50 to 60% of the way of what we need to make the energy security plan the document we hope it will be. And we have a pretty tight timeline. We know that the response and security begins locally. We would love it if you could share your expertise and experience to fill in the remainder of this critical information. While we hope the data we've collected so far is as inclusive as high-level data can be, we know that the few of us who are compiling and writing the plan don't have the perspective to accurately represent the risks and activities at the regional, local, or individual levels. We probably have a pretty good view of the big, scary, catastrophic Cascadia earthquake planning, but we don't know how your neighborhood, county, or industry experiences energy insecurity. We will give some examples of what we're looking for a little later in the talk, but really anything you think of when you think of energy insecurity is probably worth sharing. We also know that the best people to ask what the most important risk to their energy security is are the people who live with that risk. Chances are those people are the ones who have studied the issues and come up with some plans. Maybe they've even tried to take some actions to mitigate it a couple times and have some lessons learned that could be scalable to the region or even statewide. I guess what I hope you'll take away here is that we don't want to limit the information we get by being specific about what could be helpful. If you think we should hear about something, or if you are excited about something or energy related, then let us know. So my picture of the best case scenario here is that our inbox is flooded with information, whether it's a story about how your aunt lost power and couldn't get gas for the generator, or a county risk mitigation plan, or strategies that an agricultural industry group are trying in order to keep red dye diesel in the equipment. We'll then read through everything and throw all the data into buckets and look for patterns. Then the report will describe what we found and what might be helpful. Since we intend this to be a living document, we'll look back in the future and see what worked, what ended up not being a big deal, and what we missed the first time around. Now, if there's specific information that you think we should know, but you don't want it to be public, let us know and we'll make sure that we respect your security concerns to the best of our ability. I will note here that the IAJA did include a clause that makes the energy security plans exempt from the requirements of the Federal Freedom of Information Act. In general, at ODO, we tend to lean on the side of transparency and openness, but we'll respect any request that data not be shared, and we'll work with you to ensure that we're all on the same page about what that means to you. Now comes the fun part. While it's still fresh in your mind, anything you said, I got this great idea, I got this great stuff they can use, send it here. We've got the email link that was shared. We've got a QR code that you can get to our website and then go to the comment portal for entering text like your energy and security stories. If you have a document that needs to get sent, send it to the email address as an attachment. That's probably your best bet. please try to add a little bit about yourself in the email so we know who you are, what industry you're with, and what region of the state you're in. Our contracting friends at CNA in the next little bit will talk about what those regions of the state are. So stay tuned. So the best time to send in stuff is right now because it's fresh in your head. If there's something you need to take some time to get together, that's fine too. We'd like to have the data together by sort of mid-December. If there's some stragglers a little later, that's fine too, but the longer it takes, the more likely it'll be saved for the 2025 update rather than the inaugural 2024 plan. So there's the homework and how to turn it in. We've done a lot of talking so far and we've given you a lot to process. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. Feel free to get your homework done in class if you're so inclined. And after the break, we'll be talking about the plan for the meetings to plan the plan. Okay. So we'll be back at 1:10.
All right, everybody, welcome back from the break. We are going to move on to our next section, which we're going to be introducing our strategy for stakeholder engagement and facilitation. And to start, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. Casey Stedman. I'm a research analyst with CNA, and we've been contracted to lead all the engagement activities on this project. And I will be leading the planning and the execution of stakeholder engagement and facilitation. And we do have a wider team supporting this project, but there are two other folks in particular that I want you to be familiar with. One is Andrew Eisworth. He's a senior research specialist with CNA, and he'll be supporting all of the engagement activities, as well as stakeholder outreach and data analysis and visualization. Another name is Heather Marshall. She's a senior research specialist as well. She'll also be supporting all of these activities and specifically focusing on outreach and follow-up. So I want you to be familiar with all three of our names because you may be hearing from us through email and phone calls as we work to engage with you guys throughout the process. Now, the key thing that we want to be very clear in communicating is that we see you as absolutely vital for the success of the development and the implementation of the energy security plan. And so our goals are really to capture the diversity of views and priorities across the state of Oregon so that they can inform this plan. And so as we pursue these goals, we're going to be abiding by three principles. One is promoting openness. Another is encouraging the diverse viewpoints. And the third is fostering mutual trust throughout the life of the project. And we've been abiding by these principles from this very first meeting. And in the effort of promoting openness and incorporating diverse viewpoints, I want to walk you through our strategy, which starts with a focus on the spatial distribution of all of the representatives that will inform this plan. And so the map on the left shows you the state of Oregon divided into 6 different regions. They're color-coded, and you can identify which county you're associated with, and then see which region you would fall into. And then the map on the left shows us the distribution of the different tribal nations. This map shows us the locations of their headquarters. And so we want to ensure that we have adequate representation across all of these different regions. And so what we've identified are a total of 461 individuals that we see can provide vital information to the development of this plan. And the map on the left shows us the distribution within the state of Oregon. And so each of the little circles represent a different county in the state, and they're color-coded by the region in which that county falls. And then the size of the circle indicates how many representatives are located in that county. And you can see we have a good distribution of folks throughout the state of Oregon, across all of the regions. And we have a higher number of representatives from the cities of Portland and Salem. And that's really to be expected because of the concentration of government offices in those cities. Now, we also have folks that have been invited that are outside of the state of Oregon. And so you can see the distribution in the map on the right. Again, Oregon, we have the highest concentration there with the big yellow circle. But we have other folks, for example, from the federal government that would be located in DC. Or we have folks that represent multiple states, such as the Western States Petroleum Collaboration. And so they represent a number of Western states, Oregon being one of those. And so we know the spatial distribution of you guys, but there are other characteristics that we want to take into consideration. And so the gauge on the left-hand side shows us the percentage of folks that we know have interest in environmental justice issues. So we currently have identified 24%. And then the figure in the middle shows that we have the great majority of folks associated with government entities. So we have 277 folks from the government. Then we also have a good portion of folks from nonprofit entities or associations, organizations. We have consumer-owned utilities, private sector representatives, folks from academia, tribal nations, etc. And then the figure on the right shows the areas of specialty and the primary interests for each of the different representatives that we have invited. And we gathered this information either through perhaps personal relationships that Odo has with you guys, and so they could tell us firsthand what they know each of you specialize in. And then we also gleaned information from websites, for example, that are associated with the organizations that you represent. And so this is open data that we have just organized into this figure. And so what you can see is the great majority of folks are interested in impacts and collaborative efforts at the state level. And that's followed by threats and mitigation, interdependencies, whether that's within the energy sector or cross-sector. We have local level impacts, environmental justice, emergency response plans, energy storage, and so on. Now, we also have some interests that are represented at a much lower level. So if you scroll down to the bottom of this figure, you can see that we've invited folks that do have specialties in areas such as waste, supply chain issues, communication, cybersecurity, etc. Now, as I mentioned, this is information that we have gleaned through our research, but you all know what your interests and your areas of specialties are much better than we do. And so that survey that I highlighted that we're going to be giving you guys at the end of this meeting, in that survey, you'll have an opportunity to share with us what your primary interests and areas of specialty are. So please do provide that to us so we can validate what we've already found and then expand on it so that it is as accurate as possible. So we know a little bit about what you guys look like as a group. And now what we want to do is show how we're going to solicit feedback from you guys and have you as involved as possible into development of this plan. And this is going to happen through a series of meetings. And what I'm presenting here is our ideal scenario. So this is our starting point of a schedule to give you a big overview of the different activities and the order in which they will occur. What I want to be very clear about is that we expect this to change. We know that people's schedules change. We know that priorities change through time. And so again, this is our starting point, and we'll work to adhere to it as much as we can, knowing that things will change through time. And so we're starting off today with our kickoff. We're in the month of October, and as Tom already teed up, we're going to be asking for information from you guys regarding energy data sources, resilience plans, other types of input, including energy insecurity stories, which we'll be touching on next. Following the kickoff, we're going to focus on meetings that work to solicit feedback for each region throughout the state. And we're going to be addressing gaps in the data. So we'll be doing data gap assessments. And then we also want input on what the threats to energy systems are for each of the different regions. And we'll be working on this phase of the project through the end of the year. Now, we're also going to be meeting specifically with folks from the private sector. So reaching out to electricity, petroleum, and natural gas representatives, again, looking at data sources and threats to those industries specifically. And then we'll have a meeting focused on the SB 1567. So we'll be looking at sites that can be recommended for increased fuel storage capacity. Now, after we have all of that data collected, a team is going to do a risk assessment. So they will analyze all of the data and they will draft risk mitigation measures. And then we want to return to each of you guys and focusing again on these regional perspectives, making sure each region is well represented so that you can validate the analytical findings, the risk mitigation measures, and the fuel sites that are recommended for increasing storage capacity. And once you guys have validated all of those results, then we're going to aim to visit every one of the different regions in person to conduct hybrid meetings. We're also going to work to visit each of the different tribal nations And what we'll be doing in this round of meetings that will be in person with a hybrid format is we want you to rank what these mitigation measures are. So we want to understand region per region, tribe per tribe, which of these mitigation measures are most important for you in your circumstances. And then finally, we will have a project wrap up or rollout meeting to conclude the entire project. Now, I know that's a lot of meetings, but no, you do not have to attend every one of them. So we want to be very strategic in how we invite you to the meeting so that you can be as informative as possible. And so I'll walk you through our strategy for inviting folks. And first are the super easy ones, which is today's meeting, the kickoff, and then the wrap up at the very end, because everybody's invited to those meetings. With the private sector meetings, obviously, these will be directed only at folks that are in the private sector across these three industries for electricity, petroleum, and natural gas. And then the specific list of folks that will be invited to the SB 1567 meeting, we're still finalizing that list of folks. Now, the meetings that are focused on these regional perspectives, which will be gathering information on the threats and then validating that initial risk assessment, these are going to be based on which region you're associated with. And so we need to understand which region you feel like you can speak to the best. And then that final round of meetings where we hope to attend every region in person and each of the tribal nations in person. These will obviously, again, be associated. You'll be invited based on which region you are associated with or which tribal nation you are associated with. So when we take this approach, we're actually left with almost 150 folks who are not invited to any specific meeting beyond the kickoff and the wrap up. The reason for this is there's a good portion of you that represent Oregon at a statewide level. So we don't know which region you would most want to attend and represent. There are also, as I mentioned, folks that are visiting and supporting from outside of the state of Oregon or from DC or other states. And then there are also some of you that represent multiple regions within the state of Oregon. So again, we wouldn't know which region would be most important for you. And so again, pointing to this survey that we'll have at the end of the meeting, we're going to ask you guys to identify for us which region you want us to associate you with for this project. Now, when you select your region, you can tell us just one, and that means you'll only get invitations in your inbox for the meetings that are directly applicable for that region. You can also tell us every region if you want a whole bunch of emails in your inbox for every single meeting for every region. We are happy to do that. So if you want flexibility in your calendar, you are welcome to indicate all regions. The other thing is if you don't indicate a region for us, by default, we're going to assign you to the Portland Metro region, and you will be invited to those meetings only. Okay. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand things back over to Odo so that they can present energy and security stories.
Thanks. So wanted to break the ice a little bit here because I know we asked for what an energy and security story, and I talked about your ANTS generator, but really I want to just give some examples of other things that energy security and security might mean. I'm going to start off with one from earlier this year. So there were a lot of rainstorms in January of this year, and there was flooding, there's power power cutoffs, and there was a major landslide on Highway 101 along the coast near the town of Port Orford. The Oregon Department of Energy closed all the lanes of Highway 101 for nearly a week. And if you don't know, Highway 101 is the only major road connecting communities in the southern Oregon coast with Oregon's major cities and the distribution network to the north. So folks in the area who wanted to head north found themselves with a multiple-hour detour. That's assuming they had gas in the tank and assuming that there was gas to be had. So the closure of Highway 101 presented problems for fuel companies delivering product to communities. Now, typically that fuel would come down through Eugene and then over and then down the coast, but the landslide blocked that route. So there were two options to get fuel to that community. One would be to take large trucks on roads that aren't necessarily always ready to have large trucks, which could cause traffic backups and higher risk of accidents, or to take smaller trucks and go down through California and up, because California has different rules for what size trucks can ride on the roads than Oregon. So we would have had to get a federal waiver, which needs a presidential declaration to get that waiver. So not a lot of good options here. So it's a good example of how a routine event such as a rainstorm or an atmospheric river can cause significant energy insecurity to one specific region of the state. And you know, the Cascadia planning that we do incorporates landslides along the coast as one of the likeliest scenarios. And it's sort of an example of how planning for the worst case can really help have a plan in place for when the lower frequency or the higher frequency, lower intensity events like a landslide along the coast, which happens, you know, every 5-10 years. We can have a plan in place for that, but also be ready for the big one. With that, that's one form of energy insecurity, which sort of impacts a sort of region to a town scale, but also individuals who had to make that long commute and think about how to fill their tank with gas. I'm going to pass to Deanna for the next energy insecurity story.
Hey everyone, I'm going to talk about jet fuel problems during some recent wildfires. And you all know in recent years in Oregon, our wildfire seasons have been more severe. And so in June of 2021, when the COVID travel restrictions lifted, we in Oregon experienced a sudden increase in commercial air travel, and it was coupled with an early wildfire season. And so it was just all the wrong conditions happening at the same time. And we experienced initial jet fuel problems, but really ultimately in this scenario, it was a distribution problem. So in Oregon, with the exception of the Portland International Airport that gets a fuel piped to them via one of the local terminals out of Portland, all other jet fuel deliveries are made by truck from the Portland area throughout the state. And so in June, when we had you know, all the commercial air travel, the early wildfire season, we did run into some problems. And what was happening was that while there wasn't a real jet fuel issue, supply issue, we had problems connecting the supplies, the available supplies, with certified jet fuel trucks and drivers. And so our fuel distributors that were already working at capacity were unable to add unscheduled additional deliveries to their already packed schedules. And so we found ourselves having some trouble. So what we had to do was work with all of our regions in the West, which is where the Petroleum Collaborative comes in, but we were able to get on a call and work with some of our neighboring states. For example, Washington State provided us, they weren't addressing wildfire issues, but they provided us a list of fuel distributors from their state that was able to help us support some of the fuel deliveries to the Medford Airport in Southern Oregon. So that was very helpful. So that event just shows us that we don't need a catastrophic event to experience fuel issues in Oregon. And so we have worked with the Department of Forestry, the Department of Aviation since the 2021 wildfires. We now have a fuel coordination group where every wildfire season we stand up and we just monitor the situation, and we facilitate fuel requests and fuel deliveries to make sure that wildfire response goes on time, without delays, to keep Oregonians safe. So we even worked with a private fuel vendor that's now dedicating a truck and driver every season when we need that support. So thank you, Max.
Okay, thank you very much. I have the last energy security and insecurity story here to talk about. Unfortunately, becoming more common scenario, the public safety power shutoff across our state. While this example is from September of 2022, PSPSs, as they have become known, are used seemingly on a regular basis. I'll say regular. Are used seemingly in summertime across our state and perhaps across the West on a perhaps more frequent basis than previously known. Gusty winds, extreme fire conditions often can lead to fire risk that is quite elevated, particularly in forested areas. And as a last resort, when necessary, utility companies can and have shut off the power to a region in order to reduce wildfire risk. Either that power lines could start a fire or that they could worsen a fire that is already existing. Power shutoffs affect thousands of Oregonians in our and people across the Western region and communities all across our state. Turning off power causes challenges and hardships for communities and for individuals. Power shutoffs can, as an example, power shutoff in Lane County, as our colleagues from Oregon Public Utility Commission know quite well, can affect evacuation orders, can affect communication issues when power is not available, and can affect coordinating traffic or distribution of vital resources, can affect water for fire suppression, a whole host of things. So it's not done without consideration of what the trade-off would be, but a PSPS is done. This is perhaps one of the more high-profile examples of energy insecurity or energy security that we will talk about, or that does affect our state. And fortunately, that there are plans in place to help mitigate the impact of PSPS when done. Oregon Public Utility Commission, as well as Oregon Department of Energy, work to coordinate resources and coordinate communication with utilities and local governments and state agencies to help reduce that impact. But it is an example of energy security, energy insecurity that we face in our state. And finally, just on a personal note, since we have a little extra time here, I'll have just an example from my own house. Like many people in Western Oregon, I live in a forested, hilly area with above ground power lines. And in winter storms, whether it's snow, ice, or high wind, tree branches fall onto the power lines, and almost reliably, my house and my neighborhood will lose electricity. I have a backup generator, and if I keep it stocked with gasoline, but that's a risk that I don't have the ability to get that fuel needed for my generator. And folks who may rely upon electricity for medical issues or for just basics for health and safety are at risk. Perhaps some of us, myself, I have the resources when roads are clear. I've taken my family to a hotel to stay during the situations when it extends for more than a few days, which sometimes it does. Not everybody has that luxury. So just one more example of energy security, energy insecurity to point out here. And as noted throughout this presentation, we would love to hear more stories, more examples of these types of scenarios that affect everybody across our state. With that, I'm going to pass it back over to Dr. Casey Stedman to finish up our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Max. So now returning to this survey that I keep promising you guys. So on the screen, you can see a QR code. This will take you directly to the survey. So previously the QR code took you to the comment portal, but this one is a different one. So please do go to this survey. We're also going to post the link to the survey in the chat so that you guys can click on it if you don't have quick access to use the QR code. And so this survey is going to ask you guys to provide information about yourself, your profile information, such as your interests, which region you're associated with, name, title, that sort of thing. And again, we have the email address and the comment portal web link at the bottom of this screen, so that at any time during the life of this project, if there's anything that you think may be of interest to us, you have the opportunity to share it to us. If you question if it will be interesting, please go ahead and share it. We will probably value it very much. The map on the screen right now highlights the different regions. So in the survey, you will identify which region you want to be invited to. So take a look at which county you're in and identify your region, and we'll leave this up for reference for you while you're filling out that survey. So we're going to give you a minute to complete the survey, and then I'll have Odo come up to say the final goodbyes and thank yous.
Okay, again, this is Max Woods from the Oregon Department of Energy, and we thank you. This is the end of our presentation. We are going to give you back 25 minutes out of the day. The presentation we've recorded here today will, as soon as we can, be posted to our website, so that if you didn't quite get the QR codes or the link to the survey, you can find it when posted to the website. The survey will be open until mid-December. Yep, we'll make it open until mid-December. If we can get information by then, that would be great. Of course, you can always call us or email us. Our contact information at the ODO staff is right here. We have a special email and website email inbox dedicated just to this project, shown there on the bottom of the slide. And the comment portal link is also at the bottom of this slide as well. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us. Anybody who's watching this recording as well, the comment period and the survey will be open until mid-December. You can complete it. And of course, you can always call or email us directly. Thank you again for your time, and we look forward to working with you.